Thief. She is stealing from the wedding table. Vanessa Cole's voice cut through the ballroom like glass. Every violin stopped. Every rich guest turned at once. Aaliyah Brooks froze beside the dessert table, clutching 2 small bread rolls inside a torn paper napkin. Her hands shook so badly that one roll fell onto the marble floor. Laughter spread across the mansion hall. Phones lifted into the air. Someone whispered, "She came here hungry." Another voice laughed harder. "No. She came here desperate." Aaliyah lowered her eyes. Her faded gray hoodie was wet from the rain outside. Her old sneakers were split near the toes. She looked small under the golden chandeliers and diamond lights of the Ellington wedding mansion. But she did not run. She held the napkin tighter instead. "Please," she whispered. "My little brother has not eaten since yesterday." Vanessa stepped closer in her white designer gown, disgust written across her face. "You expect us to believe that?" she snapped. "People like you always have a story." The crowd murmured in agreement. Aaliyah swallowed hard. "I only took bread. I was leaving." "Security," Vanessa said coldly. "Throw her out." 2 guards moved forward immediately. Aaliyah panicked. "Please do not do this," she begged. "I swear I did not mean harm." One guest smirked. "Look at her hands." Another laughed. "She probably came from the streets." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears, but she kept standing. In her old shoulder bag were unpaid hospital bills for Elijah. Medicine receipts. A half-empty inhaler. Everything she had left in the world. One guard grabbed her arm. The bread rolls dropped from her fingers. Silence hit her harder than the insult. Nobody defended her. Nobody looked ashamed. Near the front of the ballroom stood Marcus Ellington, the billionaire groom. Black tuxedo. Calm face. Cold eyes. Powerful men surrounded him, but he had stopped listening to all of them. Because when Aaliyah bent down to pick up the bread, the sleeve of her hoodie slipped back slightly. A silver chain fell from her neck. Old. Burned near the clasp. Marcus stared at it without blinking. His expression changed for only 1 second. 1 second too long. Vanessa noticed immediately. "Marcus," she said softly, forcing a smile. "Do not let this ruin our night." Aaliyah tried to pull away from the guards. "Please," she whispered again. "My brother is sick. I just needed food." "Liar," Vanessa fired back. "You homeless girls always know how to cry on command." The room laughed again. Harder this time. Aaliyah's face burned with humiliation. One older woman shook her head slowly. "Pathetic." Another guest filmed closer with his phone. The guards dragged Aaliyah toward the giant mansion doors. Rain slammed outside against the windows. For one tiny moment, a young waitress stepped forward. "Maybe we should just let her go with the food," Vanessa turned sharply. "Do you want to lose your job too?" The waitress stepped back immediately. Hope died again. Aaliyah's bag suddenly slipped from her shoulder as the guards pulled harder. Papers scattered across the marble floor. Hospital bills. A faded photograph. And one old picture stopped near Marcus's polished shoes. A little boy stood beside a young black girl wearing the same silver chain. Marcus slowly bent down and picked up the photo. His breathing changed. The ballroom grew strangely quiet. Aaliyah looked up in fear as Marcus stared directly at her for the first time. Then the billionaire groom stood from his chair and said 4 words that froze the entire mansion. "Wait. I know you." Marcus Ellington did not move. The ballroom stayed frozen around him as rain crashed against the giant glass windows. In his hand was the old photograph from Aaliyah's torn bag. The same silver chain. The same sad eyes. The same little girl he had not seen in almost 15 years. Vanessa stepped closer immediately, forcing a nervous smile. "Marcus," she whispered carefully. "It is only a coincidence." But Marcus did not answer her. He kept staring at Aaliyah while the guard still held her arms near the mansion doors. Aaliyah lowered her head in shame. "I am sorry," she said softly. "Please just let me leave." Her voice trembled. Not because of fear anymore. Because humiliation had finally become heavier than hunger. Marcus slowly walked toward her across the marble floor. Rich guests moved aside instantly. Expensive shoes. Diamond dresses. Gold lights. Everything around him looked powerful. Everything around her looked broken. Wet hoodie. Old shoes. Thin hands shaking from hunger. "Where did you get this chain?" Marcus asked quietly. The room fell silent again. Aaliyah grabbed the necklace protectively. "It belonged to my mother." Vanessa interrupted fast. "Marcus, this girl is manipulating you." "I asked her," Marcus replied coldly. Vanessa's face tightened. Aaliyah swallowed hard. "My mother gave it to me before she died." Marcus looked back at the photograph again. Something about his calm expression was changing. Not soft. Not emotional. Dangerous. Like a memory had just woken up inside him. One older guest whispered, "Why does he care so much?" Another answered quietly, "That necklace. I think I saw it years ago." Vanessa heard that too. Panic flashed across her face for 1 second before she smiled again. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Security, remove her now." One guard pulled Aaliyah harder. She cried out softly from pain. Marcus looked up immediately. "Let her go." The guard released her at once. Tiny hope entered the room for the first time. Aaliyah rubbed her wrist silently, shocked someone powerful had defended her even that little. But the humiliation did not stop. Vanessa folded her arms. "So now thieves deserve sympathy?" she asked loudly. Some guests nodded again. The pressure returned instantly. Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. "I did not come to steal from rich people," she whispered. "My brother is sick." Marcus looked at the hospital papers scattered on the floor. Asthma treatment. Emergency oxygen costs. Late notices stamped in red ink. Elijah Brooks. Age 10. Aaliyah quickly bent down to gather them before anyone could see more. "Please do not touch those," she said quietly. Marcus noticed her hands trembling. Not fake. Not manipulative. Real fear. Real exhaustion. Near the back of the ballroom, a small catering boy suddenly spoke up. "I saw her before," he said nervously. "She gave food to that blind homeless man outside the church every morning." Vanessa turned sharply. "Be quiet." The boy lowered his head instantly. Another silence spread through the room. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Blind man?" he repeated. Vanessa interrupted again. "Marcus, do not waste your wedding night chasing stories from beggars." Aaliyah stepped back slowly. "I should go." She looked like she wanted to disappear from the world itself. Marcus watched her carefully. The chain. The photograph. The little boy's words. None of it felt normal anymore. And then came the tiny moment that changed everything deeper. Marcus noticed writing on the back of the old photograph still in his hand. Half faded by time. Half burned away. He turned it over slowly. Vanessa's face lost color immediately. Aaliyah saw that reaction and froze. Marcus read the visible words under his breath. For Marcus, protect her. The entire ballroom went silent. If you are watching this story right now, comment where you are watching from, and tell me honestly, do you believe Aaliyah is hiding something, or do you believe she is the one telling the truth? Vanessa suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm. That photo means nothing. Her voice came too fast this time. Too sharp. Marcus slowly looked at her. Then why are you afraid? Vanessa stepped back slightly. First crack. First mistake. Aaliyah looked confused and terrified all at once. I do not understand any of this, she whispered. Suddenly Aaliyah's cracked phone started ringing inside her bag. She answered quickly. A weak little voice cried through the speaker. Aaliyah. Elijah collapsed again. The phone slipped from her shaking hand. Marcus caught it before it hit the floor. On the screen appeared the hospital name. St. Mary Emergency Ward. And beside the caller ID, Marcus saw a surname that made his entire body go still. Brooks Ellington. The phone nearly slipped from Marcus Ellington's hand. Brooks Ellington. The name stayed on the glowing screen while rain pounded outside the wedding mansion. Aaliyah grabbed the phone back quickly, terrified. I have to go, she whispered. Her voice cracked. My brother needs me. Marcus looked at her carefully. Who gave you that surname? Aaliyah froze. Vanessa stepped between them instantly. This is insane, she snapped. Marcus, she is clearly lying. But Marcus was no longer listening to Vanessa the same way. Something inside him had shifted. Quietly. Dangerously. Aaliyah backed away, clutching her torn bag against her chest. Please, she said softly. I do not want trouble. Trouble. The word almost sounded painful coming from her. Like trouble had followed her entire life already. Marcus handed the old photograph back slowly. Take her to the hospital, he told one of his drivers. Vanessa's face changed immediately. You cannot be serious. A child collapsed, Marcus replied coldly. I will not argue about that. Tiny hope entered Aaliyah's eyes for 1 second. Then shame crushed it again when guests started whispering louder. She trapped him. She planned this. Look at her clothes. Aaliyah lowered her head and walked toward the mansion exit under hundreds of judging eyes. Outside, cold rain soaked her hoodie completely within seconds. The luxury wedding lights glowed behind her like another world. A black car door opened beside her. Marcus's driver waited silently. Aaliyah hesitated before getting inside. She looked terrified even of kindness. Across town, St. Mary Emergency Ward smelled like bleach, sickness, and exhaustion. Aaliyah rushed through crowded hallways until she reached Elijah's room. 10 years old. Thin arms. Oxygen tube under his nose. Sleeping too quietly. Aaliyah sat beside him immediately and held his hand. I am here, she whispered. I promised you. Tears rolled down her face silently now that nobody rich was watching. On the small metal table beside the bed sat unpaid bills stacked under a cracked plastic cup. Past due. Final notice. Oxygen treatment suspended without payment. Aaliyah stared at the papers like they were slowly killing her brother one sentence at a time. Elijah opened his eyes weakly. Did you eat today? He asked softly. Aaliyah forced a smile. Yes. He looked at her wet clothes and knew she was lying. You always say yes, he whispered. The room went quiet. Emotional pain sat heavier than hunger now. Back at the mansion, Marcus stood alone inside his private office. Wedding guests still celebrated downstairs, but he was staring at a scanned copy of the photograph on a large screen. Beside it sat another old picture from 15 years ago. Same silver chain. Same little girl eyes. His assistant Daniel entered carefully. Sir, he said quietly. I checked the hospital records tied to the surname Brooks Ellington. Marcus looked up slowly. And? Daniel hesitated. Some files are missing. Silence. Marcus leaned back slowly in his chair. Wealth surrounded him. Marble walls. Whiskey shelf. Security monitors. Power in every corner. But somewhere across the city, a hungry girl was begging hospitals not to let her brother die. The contrast sat inside his chest like a wound reopening. In the hospital room, Aaliyah opened her old bag searching for money. Coins. Bus receipts. One broken inhaler. Nothing else. Then Elijah pointed weakly toward the bottom zipper. The picture fell out earlier. Aaliyah pulled out the faded photo again. Behind it was something she had never noticed before. A folded yellowed letter hidden inside the photo backing. Her hands started shaking immediately. Before she could open it, a loud knock hit the hospital room door. The landlord stood there angrily. "Rent is overdue again," he barked. "Tomorrow morning, you are out." Aaliyah closed her eyes in pain. "Please. My brother is sick. Not my problem." Elijah started coughing violently. Nurses rushed inside. Machines beeped louder. Panic exploded through the tiny room. Then Aaliyah's cracked phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered carefully. Marcus's voice came through calm and low. "Do not throw away that photograph." Aaliyah's breathing stopped. Marcus continued quietly. "And whatever you do, do not let Vanessa Cole see the letter hidden inside it." Silence filled the hospital room. Aaliyah slowly looked down at the folded paper in her trembling hand. Then someone outside the half-open hospital door whispered softly, "Too late. Too late." The whisper came from the dark hospital hallway. Aaliyah spun around instantly, clutching the folded letter tightly against her chest. Vanessa Cole stood near the doorway in an expensive cream coat untouched by rain, her cold eyes fixed directly on the hidden paper. Behind her, two security men waited silently. Elijah's coughing echoed through the hospital room while nurses adjusted his oxygen mask. Everything suddenly felt smaller. More dangerous. Vanessa stepped closer slowly. "You really do not know what you are holding, do you?" Aaliyah backed away. "Leave my brother alone." Vanessa smiled faintly. "That depends on you." Silence filled the room. Aaliyah's hands trembled harder now. Across the city, Marcus sat inside the back of a black SUV speeding through wet downtown streets. Daniel handed him another file quietly. "I checked the name Brooks Ellington again," Daniel said. "There was a sealed family settlement nearly 15 years ago." Marcus looked up sharply. "Who signed it?" Daniel hesitated. "Your father." Marcus went still. Rain streaked across the tinted window beside him while old memories started pushing back into his mind. A woman crying near mansion gates. A little girl holding a silver chain. His mother screaming that someone had to disappear. Back in the hospital room, Vanessa lowered her voice carefully. "Give me the letter." "No," Vanessa's eyes hardened instantly. "That paper belongs to my family." Elijah looked confused from the hospital bed. "Aaliyah," he whispered weakly, "who is she?" Vanessa ignored him completely. "You stole food from my wedding tonight," she said coldly. "Now you are stealing things that could destroy people." Aaliyah shook her head. "I never stole anything. Poor girls always say that." Emotional pain hit harder than the rain outside. Aaliyah looked exhausted. Wet clothes. Red eyes. Empty stomach. Fear everywhere in her body. But she still stood between Vanessa and her brother. That quiet strength irritated Vanessa even more. Suddenly Marcus walked into the hospital corridor. The entire hallway shifted instantly. Nurses straightened. Security guards stepped aside. Vanessa's face changed for half a second before recovering. Marcus looked first at Elijah. Then at Aaliyah. Then at the folded letter in her hand. "What is happening here?" he asked calmly. Vanessa answered too quickly. She found old trash and now she thinks it means something. Marcus stared at her silently. Trash, he repeated. Daniel stepped closer and whispered carefully, Sir, the settlement file mentioned a missing letter. Tiny silence. Tiny shock. Marcus looked directly at Aaliyah now. May I see it? Aaliyah hesitated. Fear battled exhaustion inside her eyes. Every time people with money ask for something, she whispered softly, poor people lose everything after. The hallway fell silent again. Even Vanessa stopped moving for a second. Marcus answered quietly. I am not asking to hurt you. Before Aaliyah could respond, Vanessa interrupted sharply. Marcus, this is absurd. But Marcus kept watching Aaliyah carefully. Not with disgust. Not with pity. With recognition. Elijah suddenly pointed weakly toward Marcus. That man, he whispered. He was in Mom's old picture. Vanessa's face lost color immediately. Marcus turned sharply. What picture? Aaliyah froze. Too late. Elijah had already spoken. Vanessa quickly stepped forward. The boy is sick. He is confused. Marcus's voice turned colder now. Daniel. Find out who erased those hospital records. Tiny hope flickered across Aaliyah's face for the first time all night. Someone finally believed something was wrong. But the hope lasted only seconds. Vanessa pulled Marcus aside aggressively near the hallway window. You are embarrassing yourself over a homeless thief. Marcus lowered his voice. Then why are you afraid of a letter? Silence. Vanessa could not answer immediately. Inside the room, Aaliyah slowly opened the folded paper for the first time. Old handwriting covered the page. Water stains. Faded ink. One sentence stood out instantly. If anything happens to me, tell Marcus the child survived. Aaliyah stopped breathing. Her fingers shook violently now. At the same moment, Daniel returned from the records office carrying another file. Sir, he said quietly, one page is missing from the hospital archive. Marcus looked up slowly. Which page? Daniel swallowed hard. The page with the mother's real name. Silence crashed through the corridor again. Then a nurse nearby whispered nervously, someone was just inside the records room. Marcus turned sharply toward Vanessa. But Vanessa was already walking away down the hallway with her phone pressed tightly against her ear. Her voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. Find the witness before Marcus does. Vanessa lowered her phone slowly after the call ended. Her face had gone pale under the hospital lights, but when she turned back toward Marcus and Aaliyah, the cold smile returned instantly. You are making a mistake, she said softly. Poor people survive by lying. Marcus did not answer immediately. He only looked at the folded letter again. Daniel stood beside him holding the damaged hospital file tightly. One page missing. One name erased. One truth still buried. Aaliyah moved closer to Elijah's bed protectively. Please, she whispered, my brother needs treatment. Vanessa turned sharply toward the nurse station. Actually, there is a problem with their payment record. The nurse froze awkwardly. Miss Cole, Vanessa's voice hardened. If unpaid patients remain after midnight, the hospital board gets involved. Elijah started coughing harder instantly. Aaliyah panicked. No, please. He needs oxygen. Vanessa crossed her arms calmly. Then maybe you should stop hiding stolen documents. Silence exploded across the hallway. A few visitors nearby started staring openly now. One woman slowly raised her phone to record. Aaliyah's face burned with humiliation. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Enough. But Vanessa moved faster. Marcus, you do not understand who she is. She pointed directly at Aaliyah. This girl appeared at my wedding stealing food. Now missing records appear. Fake letters appear. Suddenly she wants sympathy. The words hit like knives. Elijah looked terrified in the hospital bed. My sister is not a thief, he whispered weakly. Vanessa ignored him completely. Security should search her bag. Aaliyah froze. No, 2 guards approached immediately. Marcus frowned deeply now. Vanessa, if she has nothing to hide, she should cooperate. Social pressure filled the corridor instantly. Nurses looked uncomfortable. Visitors whispered. Phones stayed raised. Aaliyah clutched her old bag tightly against her chest. That bag carried everything she still owned. Elijah's medicine receipt. The old photograph. The silver chain. Her dignity. Please, Aaliyah whispered shakily. Do not do this. Vanessa stepped closer. Then give back what belongs to this family. One guard reached toward the bag. Suddenly Elijah cried out loudly, "Stop touching her." His voice echoed down the hallway. Emotional silence followed immediately. Tiny hope flickered across Marcus's face as he watched the boy. Elijah pointed weakly toward Vanessa. She came to our apartment before, he said breathlessly. Vanessa's expression cracked for half a second. You are confused. No, Elijah whispered. You wanted my sister to burn the letter. Marcus slowly turned toward Vanessa now. You went to their apartment. Vanessa laughed coldly. This sick child will say anything. But Daniel suddenly spoke quietly. Sir, there is something strange. He held up the hospital archive. The missing page was removed tonight. Security logs show a visitor used the Cole family access code. The hallway went completely silent. Vanessa's jaw tightened instantly. But before Marcus could question her again, another obstacle hit. A doctor approached quickly with worried eyes. Miss Brooks, your brother's medication cannot continue until billing clears. Aaliyah looked shattered. I begged for more time. The doctor lowered his head apologetically. I am sorry. Vanessa looked satisfied again. Reality is cruel, she whispered. Aaliyah's knees nearly gave out from exhaustion and shame. Marcus caught her arm before she fell completely. That tiny moment changed the energy around them. The rich billionaire holding the homeless girl steady under cold hospital lights. Several people exchanged uneasy looks now. One older nurse quietly muttered, something feels wrong here. Vanessa heard it. Panic flashed across her eyes for the first time. She immediately pointed toward Aaliyah again. She manipulated all of you. Marcus released Aaliyah slowly but did not step away from her side. Daniel, he said calmly, pay the boy's treatment tonight. Vanessa spun toward him instantly. Marcus. A child will not suffer while adults hide secrets. Emotional silence again. Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears instantly, but she lowered her head quietly instead of speaking. She had been humiliated so many times that kindness itself now felt dangerous. But Vanessa was not finished. She suddenly pulled a folded paper from her purse. Then perhaps you should explain this first. She handed it directly to Marcus. Daniel leaned closer. Marcus's eyes narrowed immediately. The paper was a police complaint. Filed that same night. Theft accusation. Against Aaliyah Brooks. The hallway erupted into whispers again. I knew it. She fooled him. Poor girls always have a story. Aaliyah looked completely crushed now. I did not steal anything, she whispered. Vanessa spoke louder deliberately. Then why did security footage disappear after you entered the ballroom? Marcus looked between both women silently. Tiny doubt entered the room again. Tiny humiliation returned harder than before. Then Elijah suddenly reached beneath his blanket with trembling hands. "Aaliyah," he whispered weakly. "I hid something." He slowly pulled out a small cracked phone wrapped in cloth. Marcus stared instantly. The screen was broken, but still blinking with one unread video file. The cracked phone trembled in Elijah's weak hands under the cold hospital lights. Everyone stared at it instantly. Vanessa's face lost color for one dangerous second before she forced herself to smile again. "A broken phone proves nothing," she said sharply. But Marcus stepped closer slowly, his eyes fixed on the blinking video file. "Where did you get that?" Elijah swallowed painfully. "From the wedding kitchen," he whispered. "A man dropped it while yelling at my sister." Silence spread across the hallway. Aaliyah looked confused now. "Elijah, why did you not tell me?" "Because they would take it." Marcus gently held out his hand toward the boy. "May I see it?" Elijah hesitated only briefly before giving him the phone. Vanessa moved instantly. "Marcus, this is ridiculous." But Marcus ignored her completely. Daniel quickly connected the damaged phone to a tablet charger nearby. The screen flickered weakly. Everyone waited. Emotional tension filled the corridor like heavy smoke. Then the video finally started playing. Grainy ballroom footage appeared first. Guests laughing. Music playing. Servers rushing between tables. Then suddenly the angle shifted toward the back hallway near the kitchen doors. Aaliyah appeared on screen holding leftover bread tightly inside a napkin. Hungry. Ashamed. Trying to leave unnoticed. A few people nearby started whispering immediately. "See?" Vanessa said quickly. "She stole from the wedding." But Marcus kept watching silently. Then another figure entered the video. Vanessa. The hallway fell completely still. On screen, Vanessa grabbed Aaliyah's wrist aggressively near the kitchen door. No sound at first. Only body language. Fear. Pressure. Then audio crackled back suddenly. Vanessa's voice echoed clearly from the speaker. "Take the money and disappear." Aaliyah shook her head desperately on the screen. "I only needed food for my brother." Another silence crashed through the hospital corridor. One nurse slowly lowered her phone. Marcus's eyes darkened slightly. The video continued. Vanessa pulled something from her purse. A folded paper. The same letter. "You should never have seen this," Vanessa whispered in the recording. Then the screen glitched violently. The final seconds were corrupted. But one thing remained visible clearly before the file ended. Vanessa ripping a page from a hospital document. Silence. Pure silence. Daniel looked stunned. "The missing archive page," Vanessa interrupted instantly. "This video is edited." Her voice sounded too fast now. Too sharp. "Anyone can fake footage." Marcus turned toward her slowly. "Can they fake your voice too?" Emotional shock spread across the hallway. Even the guards looked uncomfortable now. Aaliyah stood frozen beside Elijah's bed, tears building quietly in her eyes. For the first time since entering the mansion gates, someone with power had finally seen proof she was not lying. Tiny hope entered her face carefully. But fear still stayed there too. Marcus replayed one frame slowly. His hand stopped suddenly. Zoomed in. The folded letter. A silver symbol stamped faintly near the edge. His breathing changed. Vanessa noticed immediately. Panic flashed inside her eyes again. "Marcus," she said carefully, "you do not understand what that symbol means." Marcus did not answer. He only looked toward Aaliyah. "Where is the letter now?" Aaliyah tightened slightly. "Safe." Vanessa stepped forward instantly. "That letter belongs to my family." "Then why were you hiding it?" Marcus asked quietly. No answer came. The hallway felt colder now. If you are watching this story right now, tell me in the comments, what do you think Vanessa is truly afraid of? And what do you think that hidden letter really means? Elijah suddenly coughed harder again, breaking the silence. A doctor rushed forward. He needs immediate medication. Marcus nodded toward Daniel immediately. Handle it. Tiny relief hit Aaliyah for half a second. Then another obstacle arrived instantly. Vanessa pulled out her own phone calmly. Before you trust her completely, Marcus, perhaps you should see the police update. She turned the screen around slowly. Another report had just been filed. Fraud investigation. Under Aaliyah Brooks's name. Aaliyah looked horrified. What? Vanessa folded her arms. Looks like your homeless girl has more secrets. The whispers started again immediately around them. Tiny hope cracked again. Marcus stared carefully at the new report. Then his eyes narrowed slowly. Interesting. Vanessa stiffened slightly. What? Marcus lifted the phone calmly. This police report was filed 20 minutes ago. Silence. Before the video was even recovered. Daniel looked up sharply now. Vanessa said nothing. Marcus stepped closer to her. So how did you already know what evidence we would find? Vanessa's breathing shifted. Tiny crack. Tiny mistake. But before anyone could speak again, Daniel's own phone suddenly rang loudly. He answered quickly. His face changed instantly. Sir, he whispered carefully. Someone from the old hospital archive wants to speak to you. Marcus frowned. Who? Daniel swallowed hard. The woman says she remembers the real name removed from the file. Vanessa's face went completely pale. Then the voice on Daniel's phone suddenly screamed in panic. They found me. The call cut off instantly. The scream from the phone call echoed through the hospital corridor before the line died completely. Daniel pulled the device away slowly. Hello? Hello? Nothing answered back. Only silence. Heavy silence. Vanessa stepped backward immediately. This is insane, she snapped. Some old woman says random things and suddenly everyone believes a homeless thief. But Marcus was no longer looking at her. His eyes stayed locked on Aaliyah. She stood near Elijah's hospital bed trembling softly, still clutching the old paper bag against her chest like it was the only thing left in her world. Marcus spoke quietly. Nobody is leaving this hospital tonight. Vanessa laughed sharply. You cannot seriously protect her. I said nobody leaves, Marcus repeated. The hallway went still again. Two security guards instinctively stepped back when Marcus raised one hand slightly. Aaliyah looked confused by the sudden shift. She was not used to powerful men protecting people like her. Men with money usually looked away. Or judged. Or walked past. Elijah coughed weakly from the bed. Marcus noticed immediately. Has he eaten? Aaliyah lowered her eyes. Not since yesterday. Silence hit again. Marcus slowly removed his suit jacket and placed it over Elijah's thin blanket without saying another word. Aaliyah froze. Emotional confusion filled her tired face instantly. You do not need to pity us, she whispered painfully. Marcus looked at her carefully. This is not pity. Something about the way he said it made her eyes water immediately. Vanessa crossed her arms tighter. Jealous anger flashed across her face. Marcus, she is manipulating you. Enough, he said calmly. One word. Quiet. Controlled. Dangerous. Daniel stepped closer with a folder in his hands. Sir, I checked the archive records again. Someone deleted pages from the hospital file 2 years ago. Vanessa immediately interrupted. Old files disappear all the time. But Marcus noticed something else instead. Aaliyah's sleeve had shifted slightly while she wiped her tears. A small crescent-shaped birthmark rested near her wrist. Marcus stared at it silently. His expression changed for only 1 second. Then disappeared again. Aaliyah noticed his stare and quickly covered her arm. Fear entered her eyes instantly. "What?" she asked softly. Marcus looked away slowly. "Nothing." But it was not nothing. The same mark existed inside the faded photograph hidden in Marcus's office safe upstairs at the mansion. The photo he had looked at for years without answers. Tiny Hope moved quietly through the room now. A nurse approached carefully. The hospital agreed to continue Elijah's treatment tonight. Aaliyah blinked in shock. "How?" Daniel answered softly. "The bill was handled." Aaliyah immediately looked toward Marcus. He did not deny it. Tears filled her eyes again, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Why are you helping us?" Marcus hesitated briefly before answering. "Because something about this story does not feel right." Elijah looked up weakly from the bed. "Mama always said good people come late, but they still come." Marcus turned toward the boy slowly. The sentence hit something deep inside him. Something old. Something painful. Vanessa noticed the emotional shift immediately. Panic returned beneath her polished smile. "You are all forgetting who she is," Vanessa said louder now. "She stole food from my wedding." Aaliyah finally lifted her head. Hurt burned in her voice. "I stole bread because my brother was hungry." Silence again. Even the nurses looked ashamed now. Marcus stepped slightly closer to Aaliyah, not touching her, but standing between her and the crowd. Tiny protection. Tiny safety. For the first time all night, nobody interrupted her. But peace lasted only seconds. Daniel's phone vibrated again suddenly. Another message. His face tightened immediately. "Sir," he whispered. The archive witness disappeared after the call. Vanessa slowly exhaled in relief before hiding it quickly. Marcus noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then Elijah spoke again weakly from the bed. "Mama," Aaliyah moved closer instantly. "I am here." But Elijah looked directly at Marcus instead. "That necklace," he whispered faintly. Everyone froze. The silver pendant inside Marcus's pocket had accidentally slipped partly into view while he leaned forward earlier. Elijah pointed at it weakly. "My mother has the same symbol hidden inside her box." Aaliyah's face lost all color instantly. Vanessa looked terrified for the first time. Marcus slowly reached into his pocket and pulled the pendant free under the cold hospital light. The exact same silver crest from the hidden letter glimmered softly across its surface. Then Aaliyah whispered one broken sentence that made Marcus completely still. "My mother told me never to trust the family that owns that symbol." Marcus's fingers tightened slowly around the silver pendant. The hospital lights reflected across the old crest while Aaliyah stood frozen in front of him, breathing unevenly. "My mother told me never to trust the family that owns that symbol." Her voice cracked softly after the sentence. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Vanessa immediately stepped forward again. "This is ridiculous," she snapped nervously. "She is inventing stories now." But Marcus was no longer listening to Vanessa. Something old had already started opening inside his mind. A wound he buried years ago. Daniel looked between them carefully. "Sir," Marcus raised one hand quietly. "Bring me the archive photo." Daniel nodded and left immediately. Elijah coughed weakly again from the hospital bed. Aaliyah rushed toward him instantly, holding his hand tightly. Even scared, even exhausted, she still protected someone else first. Marcus noticed that too. Vanessa noticed Marcus noticing it. Fear flashed behind her eyes for only 1 second. Then disappeared again beneath anger. You are letting a homeless stranger manipulate this entire situation, Vanessa said sharply. She stole from our wedding. Aaliyah lowered her eyes painfully. I stole bread. Not diamonds. Silence. Even the nurses stopped moving again. Marcus finally spoke quietly. Who gave you that warning about my family? Aaliyah hesitated. My mother. Where is she now? Her eyes filled instantly. She is sick. Another silence. Heavy this time. Daniel returned carrying an old brown folder and a faded photograph sealed in plastic. Marcus took the photo slowly. His hand almost stopped moving completely when he placed it beside Aaliyah's face. The room changed immediately. The woman inside the old photograph had the same eyes. The same smile. And the same crescent-shaped birthmark near her wrist. Aaliyah stepped backward in shock. That woman, her voice broke. That is my mother. Vanessa's face lost color instantly. Impossible. Marcus stared at the photograph silently. The picture showed a younger woman standing beside the entrance gate of the Whitmore mansion 20 years earlier. Half the image had been torn away. Someone else once stood beside her. Someone intentionally removed. Daniel opened the folder carefully. The hospital archive says a woman named Naomi Carter disappeared after working for the Whitmore estate. Aaliyah's breathing stopped for a second. That is my mother's name. Marcus slowly sat down. Memories hit him harder now. Rain outside the mansion. A crying woman. Raised voices. His father screaming at someone to leave. A silver pendant falling into muddy water. I remember her, Marcus whispered finally. Vanessa immediately interrupted. You were a child. Memory lies. But Marcus kept staring at the photograph. She used to sing in the garden at night. Aaliyah's eyes widened instantly. Tears filled them before she could stop them. My mother still sings that song when she forgets where she is. The room fell silent again. Emotional pain moved quietly through the hospital air now. The past was no longer dead. Daniel carefully pulled another paper from the folder. There is more, he whispered. The employment records were changed. Marcus looked up sharply. Changed by who? Daniel hesitated. The signature is missing. Vanessa suddenly stepped closer. Enough of this, she snapped loudly. Old paperwork means nothing. But Marcus noticed her trembling hands immediately. Tiny hope entered Aaliyah's chest for the first time in years. Maybe she was not crazy. Maybe her mother had told the truth all along. Elijah looked up weakly from the bed. Mama cried every time she saw that necklace, he whispered softly. Marcus slowly looked down at the pendant again. A tiny engraving rested inside the crest. One word. Forever. His expression darkened instantly. Only family members knew about this engraving. Vanessa turned pale. Daniel looked shocked. Then how did her mother know? Nobody answered. Because everybody suddenly understood the same terrifying thing. Naomi Carter was never just a servant at the Whitmore mansion. She was connected to the family itself. But before Marcus could speak again, the hospital room door suddenly opened hard. An elderly nurse stepped inside nervously. Sir, she whispered. A woman downstairs keeps asking for Miss Aaliyah. Who? Marcus asked immediately. The nurse swallowed hard. She says she worked at the Whitmore mansion years ago. Vanessa's entire face changed instantly. Pure fear now. Real fear. The nurse continued shakily. And before security stopped her, she said the person who destroyed Naomi Carter's life still lives inside the Whitmore mansion. The old nurse stood trembling near the hospital doorway while everybody stared at her in silence. She said the person who destroyed Naomi Carter's life still lives inside the Whitmore mansion. Vanessa reacted first. Throw her out, she snapped immediately. She is lying. But Marcus's eyes darkened slowly. He noticed something important now. Vanessa was afraid before hearing the woman's name. That fear was real. Daniel stepped closer carefully. Sir, security says the woman refuses to leave. Marcus answered without hesitation. Bring her upstairs. Vanessa grabbed his arm instantly. Marcus, do not do this in public. He slowly removed her hand. Maybe the truth should stop hiding. The sentence hit the hallway like cold steel. 20 minutes later, the private hospital conference room filled with tension. Wealthy members of the Whitmore family arrived after hearing rumors. Lawyers whispered near the windows. Phones glowed quietly in nervous hands. Aaliyah sat near Elijah holding him tightly while trying not to shake. She looked completely out of place inside the polished room full of expensive coats and cold stares. Vanessa made sure everyone noticed it too. This girl stole food from my wedding, she announced loudly. Now she is trying to steal sympathy. Several guests nodded immediately. Money always spoke first. The old nurse finally entered slowly with security behind her. Her name was Martha Green. The moment she saw Aaliyah, tears filled her eyes. She looks exactly like Naomi, Martha whispered. The room went silent again. Vanessa stood up sharply. Enough. This woman was fired years ago. Martha looked directly at her. I was silenced years ago. Emotional pressure exploded instantly across the room. Marcus remained calm, but his eyes never left Martha. Tell me what happened. Martha hesitated. Fear crossed her face visibly. Then she looked toward Vanessa. I cannot. Vanessa immediately stepped closer. Because there is nothing to tell. But Daniel suddenly placed a thin folder onto the table. Actually, he said quietly, there is. Vanessa froze. Daniel opened the file slowly. The original employment records from the mansion were altered after Naomi disappeared. Marcus looked at the missing signatures again. Then another paper slipped out accidentally. A photograph. Half burned. Half hidden. Aaliyah stared at it in confusion. Her breathing stopped. Naomi stood inside the photo holding a newborn baby wrapped in a faded blanket. The baby wore the same silver crest pendant. That cannot be, Aaliyah whispered weakly. Vanessa immediately lunged forward and snatched the photograph. This proves nothing. Marcus noticed her panic instantly. Tiny hope flickered again inside Aaliyah's chest. Martha finally spoke through trembling tears. Naomi begged them not to take the child away. Silence. Brutal silence. Elijah looked confused from his chair. What child? Nobody answered immediately. Vanessa recovered quickly. Too quickly. This woman is old, she said sharply. Her memory is broken. Then she turned toward Aaliyah coldly. And you should stop pretending your family belongs near ours. The humiliation landed hard. Several rich guests whispered again. Phones quietly lifted. Aaliyah lowered her eyes painfully while holding Elijah closer. She was drowning again. Marcus noticed. Nobody here will insult her again, he said calmly. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Why? Because you suddenly feel guilty? Marcus did not answer. Instead, he stared at the burned edge of the photograph. Something felt wrong. The fire damage stopped exactly where another face should have appeared. Somebody intentionally destroyed only one person's image. Daniel leaned closer suddenly. Sir, there is a second copy. Every head turned immediately. Daniel slowly pulled out his phone. The archive backup server recovered another frame from the same photograph. Tiny Hope entered the room again. Vanessa's face went pale instantly. But before Daniel could show the image, the conference room doors suddenly opened. Two family lawyers stepped inside quickly. "Mr. Whitmore," one of them said firmly, "your father ordered this investigation to stop immediately." Obstacle. Sharp. Immediate. Vanessa smiled again for the first time in minutes. "You see," she whispered toward Aaliyah. "People like you always lose." Martha suddenly grabbed Marcus's sleeve weakly. "Do not trust her," she whispered urgently while glancing toward Vanessa. "She was there the night Naomi disappeared." The entire room froze. Vanessa's smile vanished instantly. But before anyone could react, security guards rushed inside. "Sir," one guard said nervously, "someone broke into the archive room downstairs." Daniel's face darkened. "The backup file is gone." Aaliyah closed her eyes slowly like the last piece of hope had just died. Vanessa leaned back calmly now. Too calmly. "Looks like there is no proof after all." Then Elijah quietly pulled something from inside his worn jacket pocket. A small folded paper. "Mama," he whispered softly to Aaliyah, "the old lady gave me this before security took her away." Marcus slowly unfolded the paper under the cold hospital lights. One sentence was written across it in shaky handwriting. "She did not lose the child. The child was taken into the Whitmore family." The folded paper trembled slightly in Marcus's hands under the cold hospital lights. "She did not lose the child. The child was taken into the Whitmore family." Nobody in the room breathed for a moment. Vanessa stared at the message like she wanted it to disappear. Daniel looked toward Marcus carefully. "Sir," Marcus slowly folded the paper again. His voice stayed calm. Too calm. "Bring everyone to the Whitmore boardroom." Vanessa immediately stepped forward. "Absolutely not." Marcus finally looked directly at her. "Tonight." One word. Final. An hour later, the massive Whitmore mansion boardroom filled with tension and whispers. Wealthy relatives sat around a long polished table pretending confidence while secretly watching Aaliyah like she did not belong there. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. Security guards lined the walls. Lawyers waited beside stacks of documents. A giant screen remained dark at the front of the room. Aaliyah stood near the doorway holding Elijah's hand tightly. Her faded jacket and worn shoes looked painfully small against the luxury around her. She wanted to leave. Every eye reminded her she was unwanted. Vanessa noticed immediately. "You should be grateful they even allowed you inside," she said coldly. "Girls like you belong outside service doors." Several guests looked away awkwardly. Others quietly lifted phones again. Elijah squeezed Aaliyah's hand harder. Marcus entered the room slowly beside Daniel. Silence spread instantly. Quiet authority filled the mansion like heavy rain before a storm. Marcus did not sit beside Vanessa this time. He sat across from her. That alone changed everything. Vanessa forced a smile. "Marcus, this family does not need public embarrassment over lies." Marcus answered calmly. "Then the truth should protect you." The sentence landed hard. Martha Green sat trembling near the far end of the room under security watch. Her eyes stayed lowered the entire time. Aaliyah noticed how afraid she looked. Daniel carefully placed several folders onto the table beside Marcus. The silver pendant rested on top. Visible now. Intentional. Tiny hope flickered quietly through the room. One wealthy aunt whispered softly, "That symbol belongs only to direct Whitmore blood." Vanessa heard it too. Fear returned briefly behind her eyes. Marcus finally looked toward Aaliyah. "You will stay." She blinked in surprise. Nobody had ever asked her to stay anywhere important before. Vanessa immediately stood up again. "This is insane. She stole food from my wedding." Because her brother was starving, Marcus answered without raising his voice. Silence again. Sharp silence. The giant screen behind Marcus remained dark. Waiting. Martha suddenly whispered shakily, Naomi begged them not to separate her child. Several family members shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa pointed at Martha aggressively. She was paid to lie. Martha looked up slowly. I was paid to stay silent. Emotional pressure exploded across the room again. Daniel leaned toward Marcus carefully. The restored archive footage is almost ready. Vanessa's face tightened immediately. Tiny panic now. Tiny cracks. Aaliyah noticed it for the first time. Maybe powerful people could fear truth too. Marcus opened one folder slowly but did not show the contents yet. There are missing signatures. Altered records. Hidden payments. Vanessa interrupted loudly. You have no proof connecting any of this to me. Marcus looked at her quietly for several seconds before asking one question. Then why were you afraid before Naomi Carter's name was even mentioned? Nobody moved after that. Not even the guards. If you are watching this story right now, comment who you believe deserves justice most. Because somebody in that room already knew the truth long before tonight. Elijah suddenly tugged gently at Aaliyah's sleeve. Mama, he whispered nervously. That lady from the wedding is watching us again. Aaliyah looked up. Vanessa's mother stood near the doorway staring directly at Elijah. Cold. Nervous. Guilty. Tiny hope rose again when Daniel quietly handed Marcus a small flash drive. This contains the missing camera footage from 20 years ago. But obstacle came immediately. Vanessa slammed both hands against the table. Nobody watches anything until my lawyers approve it. Her voice cracked slightly now. She was losing control. Several relatives exchanged nervous looks. One older man whispered, what if the girl is telling the truth? Vanessa turned toward the room sharply. Do not let one thief destroy this family. Aaliyah lowered her head painfully again. The humiliation still hurt. Even now. Marcus noticed immediately. Nobody here will call her a thief again, he said quietly. Another silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Daniel dimmed the lights. The massive screen slowly flickered alive behind Marcus. Martha began crying softly before the footage even started. Vanessa stepped backward unconsciously. Marcus picked up the silver pendant with one hand and the remote control with the other. Then he looked at the entire room calmly and said, before you judge her, watch this. The screen flickered once. Then the old camera footage finally began to play. Grainy black and white images filled the giant boardroom wall. 20 years earlier. Rain pouring outside Whitmore Memorial Hospital. Nurses running through crowded hallways. A younger Martha Green appeared on screen holding a newborn wrapped in a thin white blanket. The room fell silent instantly. Nobody touched their phones anymore. Nobody whispered. Marcus stared at the screen without blinking. Then another figure entered the footage. Vanessa's mother. Eleanor Whitmore. Elegant. Calm. Cold. She handed Martha a thick envelope. The timestamp froze the entire room. Martha's shaking voice finally broke the silence. She told me the baby would ruin the Whitmore name. Aaliyah slowly looked up from her chair. Her breathing became uneven. Vanessa immediately stood. This proves nothing. Marcus did not even look at her. Sit down. Quiet authority. Dangerous now. The footage continued. Eleanor whispered something to Martha before placing a silver pendant inside the baby's blanket. The exact same pendant now resting on the table. Gasps spread across the room. One wealthy uncle stood halfway from his chair. That pendant belonged to Marcus's sister Naomi. Another silence. Heavy this time. Daniel opened the second folder carefully. Inside was a faded hospital record. Missing pages now restored. Marcus held it up slowly. Birth mother, Naomi Carter. Aaliyah froze completely. Her lips parted slightly. Naomi. The same name her sick mother whispered for years during fever dreams. Vanessa pointed angrily toward the papers. Fake documents. Daniel immediately answered. Verified by the hospital archive department this morning. Martha began crying openly now. Naomi begged them not to take her daughter. Elijah looked confused beside Aaliyah. Mama, what are they talking about? Aaliyah could not answer. Her hands trembled too hard. Marcus finally looked directly at her for the first time since the meeting began. His eyes softened painfully. Your real name is not Aaliyah Brooks. The room stopped breathing again. Marcus opened the final page slowly. It is Aaliyah Carter. Sharp silence exploded across the mansion. Several guests lowered their heads immediately. Others stared toward Vanessa in shock. A rich woman near the back whispered quietly, they stole her life. Vanessa's voice cracked now. You are twisting old stories. Marcus pressed another button on the remote. The screen changed again. Another piece of footage appeared. This time from the wedding kitchen only days earlier. Aaliyah entering carefully. Hungry. Weak. Carrying leftover bread toward Elijah. Then Vanessa appeared on screen. Smiling. Calm. She deliberately pointed toward Aaliyah before security moved in. Daniel paused the footage exactly there. The theft accusation was planned before any food was even taken. Murmurs spread rapidly across the room. Vanessa stepped backward unconsciously. No, Martha suddenly stood with shaking legs. I kept quiet because Eleanor paid for my son's surgery. But Vanessa learned the truth years ago. Every head turned sharply toward Vanessa. Marcus's jaw tightened. Martha pointed directly at her now. She found Naomi's letters after Eleanor died. Daniel quietly placed several yellowed letters onto the table. Naomi's handwriting covered every page. One sentence had been circled in red ink. If my daughter ever returns, tell her I never abandoned her. Aaliyah finally broke. Tears rolled silently down her face. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just years of pain collapsing quietly inside one broken breath. Elijah wrapped both arms around her waist. Mama did nothing wrong, he whispered. Even some wealthy guests looked ashamed now. Marcus picked up the silver pendant carefully and walked toward Aaliyah. He stopped directly in front of her. This belonged to your mother. Vanessa suddenly shouted, desperate now. You cannot prove she is family. Daniel answered immediately. The DNA authorization request was hidden under Vanessa Whitmore's private legal files. The room exploded with shocked whispers again. Vanessa's face lost all color. Marcus turned slowly toward her. Calm. Controlled. Terrifying. You knew the truth before the wedding, he said quietly. Vanessa could not answer. Not this time. Then Daniel revealed one final document. Naomi Carter's original inheritance amendment. Signed. Legal. Untouched. The entire Whitmore estate had once named Naomi's future child as protected family beneficiary. Aaliyah stared at the paper in disbelief. Suddenly every humiliation made sense. Every erased record. Every lie. Every closed door. Her entire life had been stolen before she could even speak her first word. The room slowly turned toward Vanessa now. Not with respect anymore. With judgment. With disgust. Marcus looked at her one final time and asked the question that shattered the last piece of her control. How long were you planning to keep her buried? Vanessa's lips trembled slightly, but she still tried to stand tall beneath the weight of every eye in the mansion. The silence around her had changed now. It was no longer admiration. It was judgment. Cold. Heavy. Final. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not need to. How long were you planning to keep her buried? He asked again. Vanessa swallowed hard. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Gasps moved quietly across the room. Aaliyah lowered her eyes for a second. Not because she was ashamed anymore. Because the truth hurt more than the humiliation. Martha stepped forward slowly, still crying. That girl slept hungry while you wore diamonds bought with her inheritance. Vanessa pointed at Martha desperately. You took the money too. Martha nodded through tears. Yes. And I will regret it for the rest of my life. That answer shattered the last protection Vanessa still had. Even her own allies looked away now. One older Whitmore board member removed his glasses slowly. You lied to this family for years. Another guest whispered, she let that poor girl suffer. Phones slowly lowered around the room. Nobody wanted gossip anymore. They wanted distance from shame. Vanessa looked toward the family table for support, but no one moved. Not one person defended her. Marcus finally turned toward Daniel. Call the legal department. Vanessa's eyes widened instantly. Marcus, please. No, he answered calmly. You lost the right to ask this family for mercy the moment you destroyed hers. A sharp silence followed. Daniel opened another folder. Official documents. Bank transfers. Hidden legal amendments. Naomi Carter's inheritance protection file. Vanessa had hidden every page for years. Marcus held the final document high enough for the room to see. Effective immediately, Vanessa Whitmore is removed from all family trust management and estate authority. The room froze again. Vanessa shook her head violently. You cannot do this. Marcus looked directly at her. I already did. Emotional shock spread across every face in the mansion. Vanessa's mother quietly sat down without speaking. One wealthy cousin slowly removed the engagement ring Vanessa had once shown proudly at family dinners and placed it on the table beside her. Public shame without screaming. Without violence. Worse than either. Aaliyah still stood silently near the back of the room holding Elijah close beside her. Marcus noticed her shaking hands. He walked toward her slowly, carrying the silver pendant. The same pendant hidden with her since birth. The same pendant everyone once ignored. He placed it gently into her palm. This belongs to your family, he said quietly. Aaliyah stared at the necklace through tears. Elijah looked up at her softly. Mama, does this mean we are not alone anymore? Aaliyah finally broke into silent crying again. Not from pain this time. From relief she did not know how to carry yet. Vanessa suddenly stepped forward again, voice cracking now. She stole food from a wedding. Marcus turned sharply. No, his voice became colder than before. She tried to feed a hungry child while you protected a lie. Complete silence. Even the staff near the doors looked emotional now. Martha slowly handed Aaliyah Naomi's old letters tied together with faded ribbon. Your mother never stopped searching for you, she whispered. Aaliyah pressed the letters against her chest carefully like something sacred. Then Daniel revealed the final confirmation. The Whitmore Legal Counsel officially recognized Aaliyah Carter as Naomi Carter's surviving daughter and lawful family beneficiary. No more hidden records. No more fake names. No more erased identity. The entire room stood frozen as years of injustice collapsed in one moment. Marcus faced the guests calmly. From this day forward, anyone who humiliates Aaliyah Carter humiliates this family. Nobody argued. Nobody dared. Vanessa slowly sat down alone while the people who once followed her quietly stepped away. Her power disappeared without a single scream. Moral justice. Clean. Public. Final. Then Marcus looked back toward Aaliyah. His expression softened for the first time all night. Your mother's room has remained untouched for 20 years, he said gently. Aaliyah looked up slowly. Marcus extended his hand toward her. Come home. The massive mansion doors slowly opened. Warm golden light spilled across the marble floor. Aaliyah stood frozen at the entrance with Elijah's small hand wrapped tightly around hers. For a moment, she could not move. This place had once looked impossible from the outside gates. A world built for people richer, cleaner, safer than her. Now the same mansion stood open for her. Marcus remained beside her quietly. No pressure. No grand speech. Just calm presence. You decide when to walk in, he said softly. Aaliyah looked down at the silver pendant resting in her hand. The same pendant hidden beside her as a baby. The same pendant that survived hunger, shame, rain, and years of silence. Elijah tugged her sleeve gently. Mama, it is warm inside. Tears filled her eyes again. But this time they carried peace instead of fear. Slowly, she stepped forward. One step. Then another. The doors closed quietly behind them. Not like a prison. Like safety. Days later, the mansion no longer felt cold. Nurses now cared for her mother upstairs in Naomi Carter's restored room. Fresh flowers stood beside the bed. Real medicine. Clean blankets. Her mother slept peacefully for the first time in years. Aaliyah sat beside her quietly one evening while reading Naomi's old letters again. One line stayed in her heart. If love finds her before I do, tell her she was never forgotten. Aaliyah pressed the paper gently against her chest. Martha visited often now. No longer hiding. No longer afraid. She brought Elijah homemade bread one afternoon, and the boy laughed louder than anyone had heard in months. No more stealing food, he joked softly. The room laughed gently with him. Healing sounded strange at first. Then beautiful. Marcus kept his promise too. Quietly. Carefully. He restored Aaliyah's legal identity through the courts. Her documents now carried her real name, Aaliyah Carter. Elijah's school tuition was fully secured. Naomi's inheritance account was reopened legally under Aaliyah's protection. But Marcus never treated her like charity. That mattered most. One afternoon, he found her standing alone beside the mansion garden. Looking at workers preparing flowers for a family memorial. You still look ready to run, he said quietly. Aaliyah smiled faintly for the first time. People like me learn to leave before doors close. Marcus shook his head slowly. Not this time. Silence settled softly between them. Safe silence. Not painful silence. Elijah suddenly ran through the garden laughing with a toy airplane Daniel had bought him. Mama! Look! Aaliyah watched her son smiling beneath sunlight instead of fear. That image healed something inside her more than money ever could. Vanessa disappeared from public family events after the scandal. Her authority was gone. Her engagement ended quietly. The same people who once followed her now avoided speaking her name. But Aaliyah did not celebrate her downfall. She was too busy rebuilding her own life. That was the difference between dignity and cruelty. One evening, Marcus finally brought Aaliyah into Naomi's private study. Old family photographs covered the walls. One picture stopped her instantly. Naomi holding a baby wrapped in white cloth. The silver pendant visible against tiny fingers. Aaliyah touched the frame carefully with trembling hands. She really loved me, she whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. She never stopped. Tears rolled down her face again. Quiet tears now. Healing tears. Marcus carefully placed the pendant into a velvet box beside Naomi's photograph. No longer hidden. No longer cursed by lies. A family truth finally restored. Later that night, Aaliyah stood on the mansion balcony holding Elijah close while city lights glowed below them. The same city that once ignored her hunger. The same world that once laughed while she begged for bread. Elijah leaned sleepily against her shoulder. "Are we rich now?" he asked innocently. Aaliyah smiled softly through tears. "No," she whispered. "We are safe now." Marcus stood quietly nearby, listening without interrupting. Peace settled over the mansion at last. And somewhere deep inside those old walls, Naomi Carter's promise had finally come home. Because the world may ignore the poor. It may mock torn clothes and empty hands. But the truth cannot stay buried forever. Those who use power to destroy innocent lives will one day stand exposed before everyone. And kindness, even after years of pain, still finds its way back into the light.